Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. This is Kristina Tanasichuk, Executive Editor of Homeland Security Today, and we're starting the year off with a cyber breach, unfortunately, of the Treasury Department. And as many may have heard over the holidays, a Chinese known actor attacked the Treasury Department and was successful in what they're calling a major incident or a major breach. And so what we wanted to do is kind of go through what exactly happened on December 8th and talk with James Turgal, who's a former Executive Assistant Director for the FBI Information and Technology Branch and also CIO of the FBI. So welcome, sir.
Great to have me. Great to be here, Kristina. Thank you.
Great. Not a great way to start the year, but I'm glad we're starting it off, at least discussing it with you. I know you have a tremendous amount of experience investigating crimes for the FBI and certainly, making sure that the FBI systems are secure and you know what a tough job this is. So I look forward to talking with you about this. What we do know is that the attack on Treasury happened December 8th through a third party. And the third party was Beyond Trust. And they accessed a digital key and were able to access some offices within the Office of Foreign Assets Control. So can you tell us any more about what you may know as an insider or what the press is, a little bit beyond what the press knows?
So yeah, absolutely. So this is not a new type of activity by the Chinese. This is unfortunately they use known CVEs or known vulnerabilities to access the third party. What I find kind of amusing, but not really, is the fact that they were actually trying to access OFAC. I mean, think about the irony here, right? The Office of Foreign Asset Control, right, is that group that provides the list of terrorist and non-payment organizations. And if you have threat actors out there, especially Chinese or nation state threat actors who are engaging in ransomware and others, right, you can't pay those organizations because they're on the OFAC list. So it's not a coincidence that they're trying to attack and get some information about OFAC and about that list. It's unfortunate that Treasury is the victim of this particular crime. Having been the CIO of the FBI, I can tell you, I was there, in that role during NotPetya and other types of major attacks. It's difficult when you're a government agency who is trying to not only serve the public, right, but also protect your systems.
Absolutely. Well, and you were also there for the biggest personnel hack in history, right? Yeah. So you've
Yes.
seen it all. It is very difficult.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I was the head of HR. I was the chief human resource officer for the FBI during the OPM hack, and that my response to that and a number of other things led to me being then elevated as the CIO of the FBI. So I've seen how difficult it is to respond to these things. Certainly, federal agencies, no matter who they are, right, the federal procurement rules, it's difficult to actually do cybersecurity. There's both a there's a monetary aspect and there's also a personnel aspect, right? So it's difficult to get people that are now out in the private sector who are working, making a ton more money than the either Treasury or the FBI or other government agencies can pay, and so they have to lean on third parties. And unfortunately, a third party risk and response and third party management programs are so critical because there have been a ton of third party attacks. Right, 2020 was Kaseya, SolarWinds. Again, that was a Russian attack, especially Kaseya and SolarWinds. Those are Russian-based attacks against U.S. government agencies as well. And so, right, we're being bombarded from all aspects and certainly all corners of the world, but certainly by the nation states. And unfortunately, having to rely on third parties. The distinction here is about the access and control piece, right? Because of the CVEs that were compromised, right, were part of a cloud-based aspect, and it was an access control piece. And so that's how they were able to get through the cloud using those known vulnerabilities and into those desktops.
Right. And we're hearing so far that they only saw unclassified documents or they accessed unclassified documents. Do you have any insight as to if that's all they saw or if we're just kind of keeping it?
Yeah, it would be knowing what I know, right? And I can't tell you everything that I know about how that works, but so the fact that they were able to remote access and only get what's literally on that particular desktop is absolutely going to be unclassified. The classified stuff will be containerized into on a different system, and so that's why there was probably no access to classified data.
Excellent. And you said earlier that this is kind of typical. So can you talk to us a little bit about the trends you're seeing?
Yeah, so I mean it's if you go back as far as 2014, right? So Target, Marriott, Under Armour, GE, right? All the social media platforms, these are all been third-party attacks by either known nation states, whether it's China, Russia, North Korea, Iran. This is absolutely a trend starting probably in the last 10 years, and now it's gaining strength, right? And so now you have certainly organizations, threat actors out there that understand that it's easier to go to the second party, the third party, the fourth party. I'm now seeing in our we have some 6,000 clients at Optiv, and I'm now seeing within that ecosystem threat actors who are going and doing research and trying not just to hit the third parties, but they're going out that to that supply chain. Who are the fourth parties? Who are the fifth parties out there? And then starting to work their way back up the food chain. And this is absolutely going to get worse before it gets better because you have, unfortunately, you have to trust your third parties, fourth parties, fifth parties, that they have the same cybersecurity acuity that they do the same training and to actually implement a third party risk management system like that is time consuming. It's costly, right? And it can't just be right a checklist. And before, right, last few years, it's been a checklist, right? It's hey, do you have remote access issues? Do you have multi-factor authentication? They're just checklists. And so how to prove that, how to secure that is really difficult.
Well, and a lot of those checklists, I mean, we have not checked that list.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, in the checklist defense, we still haven't got past kind of book type A. At the Government Technology and Services Coalition, we work with primarily small and mid-sized companies that work with the federal government, and cybersecurity is a challenge. They have to have the same cybersecurity as Northrop Grumman, and the resources and the everything is not as easily available. But you see that everybody is being attacked. I mean, if they really want to get in, it seems like they can. Is there something that you can advise agencies or other CIOs about how you plug that type of vulnerability if they really become a target?
So yeah, absolutely. So when I was the CIO of the FBI, right, we worked with all of our fellow agency CIOs, right? So being part of the FBI, we're part of the intelligence community, right? I worked with the CIO of the agency, NSA, right, because of that intelligence community and the fact that there's highly classified, highly compartmented information. But we also had a great organization through DOJ. So the Department of Justice had their own CIO. And we worked alongside a coalition of all of them. And my advice, certainly when I was there, was you have to secure your own systems first, right? And I guarantee you that Treasury is working really hard to secure their own systems, but they need to double their efforts on the third party side, right? To understand what access and actually ask the questions to every one of those third parties. What type of remote access are you allowing into our systems, right? And do you have multi-factor authentication on that? And is it the whole concept of least privilege, right? Literally kind of a zero trust kind of optimization where you're trusting no one, and then every time someone logs into your system, you're making them go to a second or a third level of authentication in order to get in. And now that's easier said than done, right? I try to do this all the time with companies in the private sector, and unfortunately, right, they're no better than everybody else, right? Everybody's fighting this problem. It's not just the federal agencies, it's not just Treasury or the FBI. Trust me, it's everybody. And so it's how do you create that whole prospect and concept of least privilege? How do you secure your systems so that you still have the ability to access them and you still have a customer experience, and it's not right so slow like a dial-up 25 years ago to get into a system. So there's a balance between both security and access.
So you said something very, very important. Of course, everything you're saying is very, very important. But you did hit on something that I don't think most people think about, and that's the procurement process.
Yeah.
So, the average American probably doesn't think about, oh, how does the Treasury buy their cyber? What would you advise as a reform to the procurement process for cyber? I mean, I think that given AI and given the rapid change of technology, the procurement process really has to be revamped majorly all across the board. But for cyber in particular, as a former CIO, how would you, or what would be one thing you'd say that could really help the procurement process so agencies could keep more ahead of the threat?
Yeah, so that's a really, really important question. And I fought this when I was the sitting CIO, because in my opinion, the certainly the ability of an organization such as, let's say, the FBI, if I need third party, cyber either response, or I need, there's no way that I'm going to be able to pay employees the kind of money they're going to make in the private sector. So there needs to be both a balance on the human resources piece, where I get the ability to actually bring in some high-powered cyber workers, cyber acute employees to come in. But on the procurement side, it is absolutely imperative that the U.S. government understand that procuring paper cups and toilet paper, right, is way different than procuring cyber response, either third parties that can either come out and provide tools and software to help us internally secure our own systems. And then also those third parties out there that if you have look at the rash of attacks against small and medium-sized communities, counties, states, right? There's no way that those organizations and those small state municipalities have the ability to pay the kind of money to secure themselves. So where do they go, right? They go to third-party, organizations out there to combine their resources because that just makes sense. But the procurement piece within the federal government needs to understand that there are critical aspects out there, critical infrastructure, which includes the cyber aspects of every federal government agency. Because remember, we are all connected, right? If you're looking at threat actors who are going after second party, third party, fourth party, they're going to try to attack some low level federal agency that has very, either not enough people to actually do cyber, and they're going to work their way up to Treasury. They're going to work their way up to the FBI because, again, we're all connected.
And how would you advise on the really critical issue of employees just kind of clicking on the wrong things?
Yeah, so I again, it's nine. I think the numbers are still consistent. 93% of all attacks are human related, right? Someone clicking the link. When I was both the human resource director and the CIO, right, in the FBI, right, I had a pretty big stick that I could use for the serial clickers, right? We made it actually a human resource performance related issue. Certainly in the private sector, that's a little more difficult to enforce, but certainly from a government agency standpoint, right, I know they're doing the training because it's mandatory. They have to. It's the question of the results of that training, right? Who are the serial clickers, right? Who are the ones that continue to fail the phishing tests and the phishing training over and over and over again? And how is the human resources organizations within those federal agencies? how are they dealing with that? Are they making it a performance issue? Are they actually taking, performance related actions against those employees? Because I guarantee you, when I did it at the FBI, once we started enforcing that, those click rates went down precipitously.
It's interesting you say that. I used to work at the American Enterprise Institute, and we found research that says the same thing, but you have to actually impose the sanction or
Yeah,
impose the punishment once, and people then know it's serious and they get serious about it. So that's fascinating.
yeah.
And so finally, I, want to leave off on a good note, or at least at least good advice note. If you were advising federal clients on how they should approach these second, third, fourth, fifth party providers and how they evaluate their security, what would probably be your top two or top three pieces of advice for them?
So Optiv does have a what we call our SLED program, which is the state, local, and educational type of program. It's I know it's difficult, but you've got to as many resources right now as you are putting on securing your internal systems, right, and doing your training. You need to carve out about a quarter of those resources specifically to the third party, right? Because one, you have got to understand and have a list of who are all those third parties. Unfortunately, you'd be really shocked as to how many organizations, whether they're public or private, don't actually have a list of every third party, fourth party, fifth party out there. And so you can't protect what you can't see, right? And so you have to be able to understand and actually create the list and those concentric rings of who has access to your system. And when you do that, it enlightens everything, right? Because your ability to look at it on a piece of paper or visually, like, okay, here are my third parties. Here's the inner ring of all those people, all those organizations that have access to my networks. And then, right, who are their biggest vendors? When you start to get that picture, it is a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So you will absolutely be able to get a sense of not only who's the most important third party out there or fourth party out there, and then you can start to really focus on who has access to what. And when you do that, it is enlightening, and you're putting yourself in a really secure position because now you know who your vulnerabilities are on the fringes of those, and then you absolutely are able to take that quarter% of your resources and really put them right towards those major third parties that have the most access.
So really map your supply chain
Yes,
and know where the
exactly.
vulnerabilities are. This is not a new concept either to fight these attacks. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. I mean, I think people are paying attention more than ever. And I know that CISA has also really focused on that supply chain and the aspects of that that are important to securing systems. So, well, I want to thank you very much for joining us on, your first day back. And we have to talk about a breach at Treasury. But it was great to join you. And if I didn't mention before, James Turgal is the Optiv Security Vice President of Global Security Risk Strategy and Board Relations. And so very happy to see that you're at Optiv and that you're still contributing back to that federal cybersecurity mission. So thank you for your time today, and we look forward to talking with you more in the future.
Thank you, Christine. It was great to be here.
Thank you.